The probe ship Seeker's Eye moved through the dark space between stars. Its hull was smooth and white, like polished bone. Inside, 3 beings from different worlds worked together on their mission. They were here to study a small yellow star and the planets around it. Commander Xylith stood at the main control panel. His people, the Vorthok, looked like tall gray beings with large black eyes. They were known across the galaxy for being careful and smart. Xylith had done this job many times before. He found dead worlds and empty planets. It was normal work. For the Galactic Council, next to him stood Klixar, who belonged to the hive mind. Klixar looked like a giant insect with 4 arms and shiny green skin. The hive mind people could talk to each other across space using their thoughts. Klixar was here to check if any life forms on these planets could join the hive. The third member was Vex Hal, a being made of living crystal. The Nexari could see energy in ways others could not. Their crystal bodies could change color when they felt different things. Right now, Vex Hal glowed a soft blue, which meant they were curious. "We are close to the 3rd planet," Xylith said in the common galactic language. His voice was calm and steady. "The energy readings are very strange, much stronger than we expected." Klixar's 4 eyes focused on the scanner screens. "The hive feels something unusual here. This is not like other dead systems we have studied." Through the ship's front window, they could see a beautiful blue and green planet. White clouds moved across its surface. It looked alive and healthy, not like the dead rocks they usually found. "Scan results are coming in," Vex Hal said. Their crystal body turned yellow with surprise. "This planet has water everywhere. The air has oxygen. There should be life here." Xylith checked his instruments again. "But I detect no radio signals, no spacecraft moving around the planet, no cities with lights." He paused. "Wait. I am seeing something else." The main screen showed the planet's surface. There were huge areas covered with strange shapes. These shapes looked like they might have been buildings once, but now plants grew over them. Rivers cut through what looked like old roads. Metal pieces floated in the planet's orbit like broken ships and stations. "Bring us closer," Xylith ordered. "We need to see more." As their ship moved toward the planet, the truth became clear. This world had once been home to an advanced species. The ruins of great cities stretched for hundreds of miles. Massive bridges crossed wide rivers, but they were broken and covered with green plants. Strange towers reached toward the sky, but their tops were cracked and empty. "Scan for any life signs," Xylith said. "Check for anyone still alive down there." The Sa instruments worked for several minutes. Finally, Klixar spoke. "The hive detects no intelligent minds on this planet. There are animals and plants, but no thinking beings." Vex Hal's body turned red with interest. "I can see old energy patterns in the ruins. This species used electricity and nuclear power. They even had some kind of space travel," the crystal being paused. "But all of it is cold now, dead for many years." Xylith studied the data on his screens. "Send down a probe. I want to know what happened here." A small metal ball dropped from their ship toward the planet below. It flew over the ruins, taking pictures and collecting information. The images it sent back told a sad story. The beings who lived here had been like the species from many other worlds. They walked on 2 legs and had 2 arms. Their skulls showed they had large brains. The probe found writing on broken walls and metal signs. The symbols were complex and seemed to show a rich culture. "They called themselves something that sounds like humans," Vex Hal said, reading the translation programs. Their planet's name was Earth. More probes went down to different parts of the planet. Each one found the same thing. Empty cities, broken machines, old bones scattered in buildings and streets, but there were also strange things that did not make sense. "Look at this," Klixar said, pointing to new images. Many of the buildings are not destroyed by war or disaster. They look like the humans just left them. Xylith nodded slowly. The probe found something else. Deep under some of the cities there are huge empty spaces, like someone dug out enormous rooms and then sealed them up. The crystal being Vexhal glowed bright white with confusion. And here, at what looks like they're space centers. The launch pads are worn down, like they were used many times. But where did the ships go? For 3 days, the survey team studied Earth. They sent probes to every continent. They scanned the oceans and the polar ice caps. They even checked the planet's 2 moons. Everywhere they looked, they found the same thing. Signs of a species that had reached for the stars, but was now gone. On the final day, Xylith called his team together to write their report. The species called humans appears to have been quite advanced, he began. They had global communication networks, space travel capability, and complex social structures. However, they also showed signs of violence and environmental damage. Clixar added, the Hive detected old battlefields and ruined weapons. These humans fought wars with each other. They may have destroyed themselves. Or, Vexhal said, they damaged their planet so badly that they could not survive. The ice caps show signs of rapid melting. The air still has traces of pollution from long ago. Xylith typed the final words of their report. Species designation, human, status, extinct, planet Earth, dead world, no intelligent life detected, cause of extinction, unknown, possibly self-inflicted through war or environmental collapse. Recommendation, safe for mining operations and resource extraction. As their ship prepared to leave the Sol system, none of the 3 survey team members looked back at the blue planet. It was just another entry in the vast catalog of dead civilizations that filled the galaxy. Another species that had reached too high and fallen too far. The Galactic Council would add Earth to their list of available mining worlds. In a few hundred years, ships would come to strip away its metals and rare elements. The ruins would be cleared away. The story of humanity would be forgotten, just like thousands of other species before them. But as the Seeker's Eye jumped into faster than light, travel heading back toward the galactic core, its instruments missed something important. Deep beneath Earth's oceans, in places too deep for their scanners to reach, metal structures still hummed with power. Automated systems that had waited patiently for decades continued their silent work. And in the cold darkness between stars, far beyond the reach of galactic sensors, other ships moved through the void. Ships that carried sleeping passengers from a world that was not as dead as it appeared to be. The galaxy had pronounced Earth dead. The survey was complete. The file was closed, but files sometimes told lies. 50 years had passed since the Seeker's Eye filed its report about Earth. The blue planet was now listed in the galactic database as just another dead world waiting for mining crews. Most beings in the galaxy never even heard of humans or their lost civilization. But in the deep archives of the Galactic Council's Central Library, a young researcher named Yun Ho was having trouble sleeping. For 3 months, he had been working in the Terran Historical Research Division. It was a small department that most people forgot existed. His job was to study extinct species and file their records properly. Yun Ho was human-looking himself, though he came from a planet called New Sol in the Outer Rim. His people had left their original world long ago and joined the galactic community. They looked similar to the extinct humans from Earth, but the council scientists said this was normal. Many species looked alike across the galaxy. The problem that kept Yun Ho awake was simple. The numbers did not add up. He sat in his tiny office, surrounded by data screens and old files. His supervisor, a Nexari crystal being named Kethmore, had given him the job of organizing Earth's records. It should have been easy work. Read the survey report, check the probe data, file everything away. But the more Yun Ho read, the more questions he had. The survey team found signs of space travel, he said to himself, reading the report again. They found launch pads that were used many times, but they only found a few broken satellites in orbit. He pulled up another screen showing the probe images. The pictures showed huge cities with millions of buildings. If this many humans lived on Earth, where are all their bodies? The probes only found scattered bones in a few places. Yun-Ho had studied many extinct civilizations. Usually, when a species died out, you could tell why. War left battlefields and weapons. Disease left mass graves. Environmental collapse left signs of desperate survival attempts. But Earth's ruins told a different story. It looks like they just left, he said quietly. The young researcher decided to dig deeper. He requested access to the original probe data, not just the summary report. This required special permission, which took 2 weeks to get. When the files finally arrived, Yun-Ho found things that made him even more confused. The probes had detected something the survey team's report did not mention. In several locations around Earth, there were signs of massive construction projects that had been deliberately hidden. Underground tunnels that led nowhere. Foundation blocks for structures that were never built, or maybe structures that had been completely removed. But the strangest discovery was in the old communication networks. Earth's internet had been a global system that connected all their computers. Most of it was destroyed or corrupted, but the probes had recovered some data. Fragments. Yun-Ho spent weeks trying to understand the human language and translate these fragments. Most of the recovered data was normal. Pictures of human families, stories and entertainment, business records. But hidden in the deepest parts of the network, Yun-Ho found files that made his hands shake. The files were labeled with words like Exodus Protocol and Deep Sleep Project and Diaspora Fleet Coordination. Yun-Ho realized he needed help. He sent a message to Dr. So-Min, a xenolinguist who worked in a different part of the archive building. So-Min was an expert in dead languages and could help translate things that the automatic systems could not handle. Dr. So-Min was older than Yun-Ho and had been working with ancient texts for 20 years. She came from a planet where her people were known for being very careful with language and meaning. When Yun-Ho showed her the Earth files, her eyes grew wide. "These are not the words of a dying civilization," she said after studying the fragments for several days. "These are the words of people making plans, big plans. Together they worked to piece together more of the human language. The translation programs got better as they fed more data into them. Slowly, a picture began to form that was very different from the official report. The humans had not died on Earth. They had left Earth. On purpose. Look at this fragment," So-Min said, pointing to text on her screen. "It talks about seed ships, carrying genetic banks and cultural archives to predetermined coordinates in deep space." Yun-Ho found another piece of the puzzle. And this one mentions sleeper protocols and 50-year development cycles and something called Phase 2 activation. But the most shocking discovery came when So-Min managed to decode a long file that seemed to be a final message from Earth's leadership. The translation was not perfect, but the meaning was clear enough to make both researchers sit in stunned silence. "We have learned the truth about the galactic community," the message said. "We have found the hidden records. We know what they do to species that become too advanced, too independent, too numerous. We will not wait for them to relocate us or integrate us or whatever lie they use to hide their crimes." The message continued. "The Exodus Protocol is now active. Our best and brightest are already on their way to the deep colonies. Our technology and knowledge go with them. Earth will appear dead to their surveys, but we will use this time to grow strong. We will learn from the darkness between stars, and when we return, we will be ready." The final lines made Yun-Ho's heart race. Phase 1, disappear. Phase 2, develop. Phase 3, return. Terra remembers her children, and her children will remember their enemies. So Min was the first to speak after they finished reading. Yunho, if this is real, if the humans really did fake their extinction, then they are still out there somewhere, Yunho finished. And according to this timeline, Phase 2 should be ending soon. The two researchers looked at each other in fear and excitement. They had stumbled onto something huge, something that could change how the galaxy understood itself. But they also knew how dangerous this knowledge was. We need to be very careful, Somin said. If the humans really did discover some dark secret about the Galactic Council, then we might be in danger just for knowing this. Yunho nodded. But we also need to find out more. Look, there are coordinate sequences in some of these files. If we could decode them, we could find out where the humans went, Somin said. But that would require using the Council's deep space scanning systems. We do not have access to those. For the next 2 weeks, the pair worked in secret. They came to the archives early and stayed late. They slowly built a more complete picture of humanity's final days on Earth. The more they learned, the more impressed and frightened they became. The humans had not just planned to leave Earth. They had planned to return as something stronger. The files mentioned adaptive technologies and evolutionary protocols and alliance building with free species. But when Somin tried to access the Council's astronomical databases to check the coordinates they had found, security alarms started going off. Within hours, Council security forces arrived at the archives. "Dr. Somin," said the lead security officer, a tall Vorthak with cold black eyes. "You are under arrest for unauthorized access to classified systems." As they took Somin away, she managed to whisper to Yunho, "The coordinates. Remember the coordinates. Find the truth." Yunho watched his friend disappear into a security transport. He knew that his quiet life as an archivist was over. He also knew that somewhere in the darkness between stars, humanity was getting ready for Phase 3, and according to their timeline, that phase was about to begin. That night, Yunho downloaded everything he could onto a portable storage device. Then he walked out of the archives and into the busy streets of the galactic capital. He had to find someone who could help him reach those coordinates. He had to warn the galaxy that the dead were about to return. Behind him, in the archives, Supervisor Kethmore was already working to bury the Earth files even deeper. But he was too late. The truth was already spreading, carried by a young researcher who refused to let humanity's story end with a lie. The galaxy had pronounced Earth dead 50 years ago. Soon they would learn how wrong they had been. Yunho had been hiding in the lower levels of the galactic capital for 2 weeks. The city above him buzzed with normal life, but down here in the old maintenance tunnels, outcasts and rebels made their homes. He carried the stolen data about. Humanity in a small device hidden in his jacket. Finding the right people to help him had been harder than he expected. Most beings were too afraid of the Council to listen to wild stories about extinct humans. Others thought he was crazy, but finally someone had given him a name, Captain Daeho. The meeting place was an old cargo bay that had been abandoned for years. Yunho walked through rusty corridors, following directions scrawled on tunnel walls. His heart pounded as he heard footsteps behind him in the darkness. "You are the one asking questions about dead humans?" The voice came from the shadows ahead of him. Yunho stopped walking. "Yes. Are you Captain Daeho?" A figure stepped into the dim light. Captain Daeho was tall and strong, with the kind of scars that came from real fighting. He looked like he might be from the same people as Yunho, though his clothes were different. Military style, but not from any official force. "I am Daeho," the man said, "and you are the archivist who got his friend arrested for poking around in old Earth files." "How did you—" Yunho started to ask. "We have people everywhere," Daeho said with a small smile. "Even in the Council archives. Dr. Somin was not the first person to notice problems with the Earth survey. She was just the first to get caught. Daeho led Yunho deeper into the abandoned bay. There, in the shadows, Yunho saw something that made him gasp. At least 20 beings of different species sat around tables covered with star charts and data screens. They all looked up when Daeho entered. "Everyone, this is Yunho," Daeho announced. "He has the files we have been waiting for." An old Vorthak female stood up. "Show us what you found, young one." Yunho pulled out his data device with shaking hands. "I found proof that the humans did not die on Earth. They left on purpose, and I think they are coming back." For the next hour, Yunho shared everything he had learned. The Exodus Protocol, the coordinate sequences, the timeline that suggested humanity was preparing for their return. When he finished, the room was silent. Finally, Daeho spoke. "You found exactly what we hoped someone would find. We call ourselves the Rememberers, and we have been tracking the human mystery for 30 years. The old Vorthak female nodded. "My name is Telara. I was once a council military officer like Daeho. We both discovered things that made us question everything we had been taught." She activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room. It showed a map of the galaxy with hundreds of red dots marking different star systems. "These are the locations where we have detected strange phenomena over the past 20 years, Telara said. "Ships that appear on sensors for a few seconds, then vanish. Energy signatures that do not match any known technology. Radio signals in languages that are not in any council database." Daeho pointed to several dots near the galactic rim. "And these coordinates match some of the numbers that Yunho found in the human files." Another member of the group, a crystal Nexari, glowed bright blue with excitement. "But the most important discovery happened just last week. The hologram changed to show a mining colony called Kepler 442b. It was a small world on the edge of council space, where automated machines dug up rare metals. The mining supervisor sent a report to the council 3 days ago," the Nexari continued. "But the council buried the report immediately. We only know about it because we have someone inside the mining administration." "What kind of report?" Yunho asked. Daeho smiled grimly. "A ship was spotted in the Kepler system. A big ship, bigger than anything in the council fleet. It appeared suddenly, stayed for exactly 1 hour, then disappeared again. But that is not all," Telara added. "The ship left something behind, a message broadcast on all communication frequencies, a message in the human language." Yunho felt his heart stop. "What did it say?" The old Vorthak touched a control, and suddenly the room filled with a voice speaking in the ancient human tongue. The translation appeared on screens around the room. "Children of Terra assess the garden. The harvest approaches." The message was short, but its meaning hit Yunho like a physical blow. The humans were not just returning. They were evaluating the galaxy, deciding what to do with it. "There have been more sightings since then," Daeho said. "Ships appearing in different systems, always just long enough to observe, then vanishing. The council is trying to keep it secret, but panic is starting to spread through their leadership." Telara brought up another display. "Council Fleet Admiral, Toxran has quietly activated deep space defense protocols. Ancient weapon platforms that have not been used for 1,000 years are coming online. They are preparing for something big." Yunho looked around the room at the faces of the Rememberers. These were not just rebels or outcasts. These were former council officers, scientists, and administrators who had discovered something that changed their entire understanding of the galaxy. "What exactly did you discover?" he asked. "What made you all turn against the council?" The room grew quiet. Finally, Daeho spoke. "We discovered that the galaxy is full of lies," he said. "The council teaches that they protect peace and order. They say they help primitive species develop and join the galactic community. But the truth is very different." Telara activated a new hologram showing population charts and star maps. In the past 2,000 years, over 300 species have been declared extinct by the Council. But when we investigated their home, worlds, we found evidence that many of them did not die naturally. What do you mean? Yunho asked, though he was starting to understand. Species that became too advanced were relocated to reservation worlds that were actually prisons, the Crystal Nexari explained. Species that refused to follow council law were systematically eliminated. Species that discovered inconvenient truths simply disappeared. Deho nodded. The humans figured this out before their fake extinction. They found hidden records in the council databases. They learned what happens to species that grow too strong or too independent. So they chose to disappear before the council could do it for them, Yunho said. Exactly. And they used the time to prepare for war. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the abandoned bay. Red lights flashed as emergency broadcasts filled the communication channels. All beings report to designated shelters immediately, a council voice announced. Unknown vessels have been detected approaching the galactic core. This is not a drill. The rememberers rushed to their sensor stations. On the screens, dots of light appeared at the edge of sensor range. Not one or two ships, but dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. By the void, Tellara whispered. They are not just coming back. They are coming back with an army. Deho was already moving toward the exit. Everyone to emergency positions. This is what we have been preparing for. As the rememberers scattered to their various hiding places and observation posts, Yunho stood frozen, watching the sensor displays. The dots of light were moving toward the galactic capital with impossible speed. Ships that should not exist, carrying a species that was supposed to be dead. The humans had spent 50 years in the darkness between stars. 50 years to build and plan and prepare. Now they were returning to judge the galaxy that had tried. To erase them, and Yunho realized that everything was about to change. The galaxy had pronounced Earth dead 50 years ago. Now the dead were returning with interest, and they brought friends that no one had expected. In the abandoned cargo bay, screens showed the approaching fleet growing larger by the hour. Soon, the Council would have to face the consequences of their lies. Soon the galaxy would learn what happened when you tried to bury a species that refused to stay dead. The harvest was approaching, and the children of Terra were coming home. The human ships had been visible on long-range sensors for 3 days now, and panic was spreading through the galactic capital like wildfire. What had started as a few mysterious contacts had grown into an entire fleet of vessels that should not exist. Captain Deho stood in the Rememberer's new command center, a hidden facility deep beneath the capital city. Around him, screens showed the approaching armada in numbers that kept growing. 1,000 ships, 2,000, 5,000. The sensors could not get an accurate count because the human vessels used technology that made them hard to track. How many species did they find out there? Asked Tellara, the old Vorthak female who had become the Rememberer's military advisor. These ships come from dozens of different design traditions. Yunho was working at a translation station trying to decode the signals coming from the human fleet. In the 3 days since the Armada appeared, the humans had been broadcasting constantly, not threats or demands, just information. Data about Council activities that had been hidden for centuries. They are not just humans, Yunho said, looking up from his work. The broadcasts mention at least 40 different species. Species that were supposed to be extinct, but are now part of something called the Free Alliance. The evidence was overwhelming. The humans had not spent 50 years alone in the darkness. They had found other species that had escaped the Council's control. Together they had built something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. On the main screen, a new signal came through. This one was different from the others. It was a direct communication request aimed at the galactic capital. "They want to talk," announced Jin Wu, a young communications specialist who had joined the Rememberers just weeks ago. Deho nodded to his team. Put it through. Let us hear what they have to say. The screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a human face. The woman appeared to be middle-aged, with short dark hair and calm eyes that seemed to see everything. She wore a uniform that was clearly military, but unlike anything in the Council databases. I am Admiral Hai Jin of the Terran Diaspora Fleet, the woman said in perfect galactic common language. I speak for humanity and our allies in the Free Alliance. We know that our return has caused fear in the galactic community. That was not our intention, but it was expected. The Admiral paused, as if choosing her words carefully. 50 years ago, our species made a difficult choice. We learned that the Galactic Council was not the peaceful organization it claimed to be. We discovered evidence of systematic oppression, species elimination, and technological suppression spanning thousands of years. Behind Admiral Hai Jin, the bridge of her ship was visible. Beings of many different species worked at control stations. Some looked familiar from Council records of extinct civilizations. Others were completely unknown. Rather than wait for the Council to decide our fate, we chose our own path, the Admiral continued. We left our home world and scattered to the far reaches of space. There, we found others who had made the same choice. Species that had escaped, species that had survived, species that were ready to build something better. Telara leaned forward, her old eyes bright with interest. She speaks like a diplomat, but look at her ship. That is a warship designed for serious fighting. The Admiral was still speaking. We have spent 50 years learning, growing, and preparing. We have built technologies that your scientists said were impossible. We have formed alliances that your politicians said would never work. We have created a society where species are judged by their actions, not their usefulness to a galactic empire. The transmission cut to external views of the human fleet. The ships were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. They moved through space like living creatures, their hulls shifting and adapting as they flew. Some were clearly built for war, bristling with weapons that glowed with unknown energy. Others were massive construction vessels, ready to build. New worlds. Still others defied easy classification. Now we return to the galaxy of our birth, Admiral Hai Jin said, as her face appeared on screen again. Not as conquerors, but as judges. We have evidence of the Council's crimes. We have witnesses to their atrocities. We have the power to enforce justice. The Admiral's voice grew harder. To the beings of the galaxy who have suffered under Council rule, your liberation is at hand. To the species that have been told they are primitive or worthless, you are not alone. To those who have collaborated with oppression, prepare to answer for your choices. The transmission ended with coordinates and a timeline. Representatives of free species may join us at the coordinates provided. Those who wish to continue the old ways have 30 standard days to prepare their arguments. The age of the Council ends now. The age of the Free Alliance begins. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans were not just returning with superior technology. They were returning with a new vision for how the galaxy should work. 30 days, Deho said quietly. They are giving the Council 30 days to surrender or face the consequences. Yunho was already working at his station analyzing the data that had come with the Admiral's message. They sent proof along with their demands, ship records, communication logs, even video footage, evidence of Council crimes going back hundreds of years. On the screens around them, the evidence played out in horrifying detail. Species forced into slavery and called integration programs. Entire worlds strip-mined after their populations were relocated to prison planets. Advanced civilizations destroyed because they asked too many questions. The humans did not just prepare for war, Telara said, her voice filled with amazement. They prepared a court case. They have evidence for everything. More signals were coming in from across the galaxy. The human broadcasts were being heard on every world, in every system. Automatic translation programs were making the messages available in hundreds of languages. For the first time in galactic history, ordinary beings were learning the truth about their government. Jin Wu looked up from his communication station. "We are getting reports from everywhere. Slave species are revolting on a dozen worlds. 3 entire sectors have declared independence from the Council. The human evidence is spreading faster than the Council can stop it." Daeho smiled for the first time in days. Information is the most powerful weapon of all. The humans understood that, but their celebration was interrupted by new alerts. Council forces were mobilizing across the galaxy. Ancient defense platforms that had been hidden for millennia were coming online. The Council was not going to surrender without a fight. "Admiral Toxaran has activated the war protocol," Tellara reported, reading military communications that the Rememberers had intercepted. "He is calling for a final stand at the galactic capital." On the main screen, they could see Council warships gathering in the space around their planet. Thousands of vessels from dozens of member species, all preparing for a battle that would decide the future of galactic civilization. But the human fleet was ready for them. As Yun-Ho watched, the Terran ships began to spread out in formations that made no sense according to traditional military thinking. They moved like schools of fish or flocks of birds, each ship perfectly coordinated with all the others. "Their ships are talking to each other," Jinwu said in wonder. "Not just with radio, but with some kind of quantum communication system. They share information instantly across the entire fleet." Admiral Hyajin appeared on screen one more time, but now she was broadcasting to the entire galaxy. "To all beings who believe in freedom, justice, and the right of species to determine their own destiny. The final choice is before you. Stand with us and help build a galaxy where all can thrive, or stand with the Council and defend a system built on lies and oppression." She paused, and behind her, the vast armada of the Free Alliance filled the space around Earth's star system. "We are the children of Terra. But we are also the children of 100 other worlds. We have learned from the darkness between stars. We have been forged by hardship and united by hope. We return not to rule, but to liberate." The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy to make its choice. In the hidden command center, the Rememberers looked at each other with expressions of hope and fear. The humans had returned, and they had brought friends. Lots of friends. Now it remained to be seen whether the galaxy was ready for the revolution they offered. In 30 days, the question would be answered. The children of Terra had come home, and they were not going to be ignored this time. The 30 days were almost over, and the galaxy was tearing itself apart. Captain Daeho stood on the observation deck of the Rememberer base, watching the chaos unfold in the space above the galactic capital. Council warships filled the sky. Like angry insects, their weapons powered and ready for the final battle, but between them something impossible was happening. Ships were changing sides. "Another squadron just broke formation," reported Jin Wu from his communication station. "The 7th Hegemony Fleet is refusing orders to fire on civilian targets." For 3 weeks, the human evidence had been spreading across every communication network in the galaxy. Videos of Council crimes, records of species elimination, proof of systematic oppression that went back thousands of years. No matter how hard the Council tried to block the broadcasts, the information kept spreading. The result was revolution on a scale never seen before. Yun-Ho looked up from his data screens, his face pale with exhaustion. For weeks, he had been translating human communications and coordinating with resistance groups across the galaxy. "We are getting reports from 47 star systems. Entire sectors are declaring independence. Slave species are taking control of their planets." "The Council still has loyal forces," warned Tellara, studying military reports on her screens. "Admiral Toxaran has gathered almost 2,000 warships around the capital. They are planning to make their final stand here." Through the observation windows, they could see the human fleet taking position. The Free Alliance Armada had grown larger as more ships arrived from the deep void. Each vessel was unique, built by different species with different technologies, but they all moved together with perfect coordination. Suddenly, the communication screens lit up with an incoming transmission. It was Admiral Hai Jin, broadcasting to the entire galaxy. "People of the galactic community," the human leader began, "the time for words is ending. In 6 hours, we will begin the final phase of liberation. Any being who chooses freedom over oppression may join us. Any being who chooses to defend the old system will be treated as an enemy." The Admiral's image was replaced by a tactical display showing the positions of all ships in the capital system. Council forces in red, Free Alliance forces in blue, and neutral ships in yellow. The yellow dots far outnumbered the red ones. "But first," Admiral Hyojin continued, "there are some truths that must be told." The display changed to show archived footage from deep inside Council facilities. Beings of all species watched in horror as the videos revealed the true extent of Council crimes. Secret prisons where entire populations were held, laboratories where captured beings were experimented on, records of deliberate species elimination, disguised as natural disasters. In the Rememberer base, even the experienced rebels sat in shocked silence as the evidence played out. "How did they get this information?" whispered Jin Woo. "They had 50 years to gather it," Daeho replied grimly, "and they obviously had help from the inside. The most damning evidence came last. A recording of a council leadership meeting from just 10 years earlier, where the leaders discussed plans to eliminate 3 more species that were becoming too advanced for safe integration. One of those species was Yunho's own people from New Seoul. The plan was to create a civil war on our planet," Yunho said, his voice filled with anger, "then offer to peacekeep by relocating us to reservation worlds. We would have disappeared, just like the others." Admiral Hyojin appeared on screen again. "These are the beings who claim to represent order and civilization. These are the leaders who speak of peace while planning genocide. This is the system that the galaxy has accepted for too long." Behind her, the vast human fleet began to move. But they were not advancing toward the Council forces. Instead, they were spreading out in a defensive formation around the civilian areas of the capital system. "We do not wish to destroy those who have been deceived," the Admiral said. "We wish to free them. Any Council ship that stands down will be offered safe passage. Any crew that surrenders will be treated with honor. But any force that chooses to fight for oppression will face the full power of the Free Alliance." The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy to make its final choice. For 2 hours, nothing happened. Council ships and Free Alliance vessels faced each other across the void, weapons ready but not firing. Then, slowly, some of the Council ships began to power down their weapons. "The Kepler Defense Fleet just surrendered," reported Tellara. "They are requesting permission to join the Free Alliance." More ships followed. Entire battle groups that had served the Council for centuries chose freedom over loyalty, but Admiral Toxaran's core fleet remained defiant. "All units prepare for final assault," came the Council Admiral's voice over the communication channels. "These rebels will not destroy our civilization. Attack Pattern 7. Engage the enemy." The battle began with a flash of light that could be seen from the planet's surface. Council ships opened fire with every weapon they had, sending streams of energy toward the human fleet. But something impossible happened. The human ships seemed to dance between the weapon beams. Their hulls shifted and flowed like liquid metal, absorbing hits that should have destroyed them. Return fire came from weapons that adapted and evolved in real time, each shot more effective than the last. "Their ships are learning," breathed Jin Woo, watching the tactical displays in amazement. Every time the Council hits them, they adapt to resist that type of weapon. Every time they fire back, their targeting gets better. Within an hour, it was clear that the battle was over. The Council fleet was not just outgunned, it was obsolete. Human technology had advanced beyond anything the galaxy had imagined possible. Admiral Toxran's flagship, a massive dreadnought that had dominated space battles for 2 centuries, found itself surrounded by human vessels that moved like living creatures. When the Council Admiral finally surrendered, his ship's weapons had been systematically disabled without killing a single crew member. "Attention, all vessels," came Admiral Hyajin's voice over the communication network. "The armed resistance has ended. All Council leadership is ordered to surrender for trial. All loyal forces are granted amnesty if they stand down immediately." From his command center, Deho watched the end of an era. Ships that had enforced galactic oppression for millennia were powered down and surrounded. The Council's secret police were being arrested by human marines who moved with impossible speed and precision. But the humans kept their promise. No one was killed unnecessarily. No ship was destroyed after surrendering. The revolution was both total and merciful. "We are getting surrender messages from across the galaxy," reported Yun-Ho. 17 core worlds have already declared for the Free Alliance. The Outer Rim sectors are forming new governments. Telara smiled for the first time in years. After 30 years of fighting in the shadows, it is finally over. But Daiho was watching something else on the screens. New ships were arriving in the capital system. Not warships, but massive vessels that could only be colony ships and construction platforms. "I do not think it is over," he said quietly. "I think it is just beginning." Admiral Hyajin appeared on the communication screens one final time. But now she was standing on the bridge of a ship in orbit around Earth. Through the windows behind her, the blue and green planet was clearly visible. "People of the galaxy," she said, "freedom has been won, but now the real work begins. We must build a new civilization based on cooperation, not domination. We must create a government that serves all species, not just the powerful ones." The view changed to show the human homeworld in all its restored glory. Cities gleamed on the continents, but they were different from the ruins the Council had found 50 years ago. These were cities built for many species, with architecture that welcomed all forms of life. "Earth opens its arms to welcome you," Admiral Hyajin said. "Not as subjects or servants, but as partners in building the future. Come and see what we have learned in the darkness between stars. Come and help us plant the seeds of a better galaxy." As the transmission ended, Deho realized that the humans had not just won a war. They had offered the galaxy a new way to live. And from the response signals coming in from across space, it seemed that most of the galaxy was ready to accept that offer. The children of Terra had come home, and they had brought the future with them. 1 year after the revolution, Captain Deho stood in the gardens of New Geneva, Earth's first truly multi-species city. Around him, beings from dozens of worlds walked together on paths designed for different types of movement. Some walked on legs, others floated on energy fields, and a few moved through specially designed waterways. The transformation had been remarkable. In just 12 months, the galaxy had changed more than it had in the previous 1,000 years. Deho was no longer just a rebel leader hiding in tunnels. The new Galactic Congress had elected him as their first speaker for liberated worlds, representing the hundreds of systems that had broken free from Council control. It was an honor he had never expected, but one he accepted with determination. "The morning session is ready to begin," said his aide, a young Nexari crystal being named Crystal, who had once been a slave in the Council's deep mines. Now she helped coordinate the complex work of building a new galactic government. Deho nodded and walked toward the Congress building. It was a beautiful structure that seemed to grow out of the hillside like a living thing. Human architects had designed it with input from every member species, creating spaces that welcomed all forms of life. Inside the main chamber, representatives from over 300 worlds were gathering for the day's session. Some sat in traditional chairs, others floated in energy fields, and a few existed as pure consciousness within special containers. It was chaos compared to the rigid order of the old council, but it was a chaos filled with hope. At the center of the chamber sat the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, led by Yoon-ho and Dr. So-min. The commission's job was to investigate the crimes of the old council and help the galaxy heal from centuries of oppression. Dr. So-min had been freed from prison during the first week of the revolution. Now, she worked tirelessly to translate the testimonies of beings who had suffered under council rule. Her linguistic skills had become crucial for understanding the full scope of what had happened. The commission has completed its investigation of the Kepler incident, So-min announced to the chamber. We can confirm that the council deliberately caused the plague that killed 2 million beings on Kepler 7. The goal was to clear the planet for mining operations. The chamber fell silent as the details were read aloud. Even a year later, new horrors were still being discovered in the council's secret files. But the commission's work was not just about punishing the guilty. It was about making sure such crimes could never happen again. Yoon-ho stood to address the assembly. The commission recommends that Kepler 7 be declared a memorial world. The descendants of the survivors should be given the choice to resettle their ancestral home if they wish. This was the new way. Instead of simply moving populations around, like game pieces, the Free Alliance asked people what they wanted. It was slower than the old system, but it was also more just. Admiral Hye-jin entered the chamber as the morning session continued. She now served as Earth's representative to the Congress, but her real job was coordinating the massive effort to rebuild galactic civilization. The latest reports from the Outer Rim, she announced, taking her place at the speaker's podium. 17 more systems have requested membership in the Free Alliance. The refugee resettlement program has found homes for over 50 million beings who were displaced by council policies. These numbers represented real lives, not just statistics. Families reunited after decades of separation. Species given back, their homeworlds. Children who would grow up free instead of enslaved. But the transformation was not without challenges. We are also receiving reports of conflict in the Zeta sector, Admiral Hye-jin continued. Some former council loyalists have formed a resistance movement. They are trying to re-establish the old order in remote systems. Daiho was not surprised. Change this massive always created opposition. Some beings had profited from the old system and wanted it back. Others were simply afraid of the unknown future the Free Alliance represented. How do we respond? Asked Telara, who now served as the Alliance's military coordinator. The old Vorthak had adapted well to her new role, using her decades of experience to build a defense force that protected without oppressing. The same way we always respond, Admiral Hye-jin replied. We offer them the choice to join us peacefully. If they refuse and attack innocent beings, we stop them, but we do not become the thing we fought against. This was the hardest part of the new system. The Free Alliance had the power to crush any resistance, but using that power carelessly would make them no better than the council they had replaced. Every decision had to be carefully considered. After the morning session, Daeho walked with Yoon-ho through the city streets. New Geneva was always busy, with beings from across the galaxy working together on projects that would have been impossible under the old system. Do you ever miss the simplicity of fighting against the council? Yoon-ho asked, as they watched a group of children from 6 different species playing together in a park. Daeho smiled. Every day. It was much easier when we knew exactly who the enemy was. Now we have to figure out how to build something better, not just tear down something bad. They stopped at a memorial plaza where the names of extinct species were carved into black stone. Thousands of species that had been lost to council policies over the centuries. But next to each name was a small crystal that glowed with soft light, representing the hope that their knowledge and culture might someday be recovered. "The memorial project found something interesting," Yunho said. "DNA samples and cultural records hidden in old human facilities. We might be able to restore some of these species." It was another impossible thing that had become possible. Human technology, combined with knowledge from the Free Alliance's member species, was making miracles routine. As evening fell, Daiho made his way to the spaceport. A new ship was arriving from the deep void, carrying refugees from a system that had just broken free from the last council remnants. It had become a daily routine, welcoming new members to the growing alliance. But this ship was special. As it landed, Admiral Hae-jin met Daiho at the boarding ramp. "These are the last prisoners from the Council's deep facilities," she explained. "Beings who have been held in secret for decades. The beings who emerged from the ship were like nothing Daiho had ever seen. Some were clearly artificial intelligences that had achieved consciousness. Others were energy beings that existed in forms barely visible to normal senses. A few seemed to be representatives of species so advanced that they had transcended physical existence entirely. The Council kept them locked away because they were afraid of what they represented," Admiral Hae-jin said. "Advanced forms of life that did not fit into their narrow view of how the galaxy should work." As Daiho watched these impossible beings take their first steps into freedom, he realized that the galaxy was about to become even more amazing than he had imagined. The revolution was not just about replacing one government with another. It was about expanding the very definition of what life could be. Later that night, Daiho stood on his apartment balcony looking up at the stars. Earth's sky was different now than it had been during the Council era. Ships from hundreds of worlds moved through the space around the planet, but they came as friends and partners, not as conquerors or subjects. In the distance, he could see the construction platforms building humanity's next great project, a massive space station that would serve as a neutral meeting place for all the galaxy's species. It would be a place where conflicts could be resolved through words instead of weapons, where different forms of life could learn from each other. The communication device on his table chimed with an incoming message. It was from Telara, sending the daily security report. "All quiet tonight," her message read. "The galaxy is learning to sleep peacefully." Daiho smiled and looked back up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Free Alliance was still growing. New species were still being discovered. Former slaves were still building new lives. Children who had never known oppression were taking their first steps toward an unimaginable future. The galaxy had pronounced Earth dead 50 years ago. But Earth and her children had returned with something more powerful than weapons or threats. They had returned with hope, and that hope was spreading to every corner of space. The revolution was over. The real work was just beginning, and for the first time in galactic history, that work was being done by free beings working together toward a common goal, a galaxy where every form of life could flourish. The children of Terra had come home, and they had made the entire galaxy their home.